Hi everyone. Today we're going to talk about CBE-0. In some of the previous sessions, we have talked about the two supplements, out of which we talked about the PAS, prior approval supplement. And in one of the sessions, we have talked about CBE-30, that is being effected in 30 days. But today we're going to focus on the another type of CBE, that is the CBE-0. Here, the changes are being effected in 0 day and not 30. So, if you remember the CB30 session, there you will see, like in case of CB30, after submission, once we get the receipt from the FDA, we'll have to wait for 30 days before implementing the any changes, before implementation of changes. But if you see, in case of CB0, you don't need to wait. On day 0 itself, means once the submission is get submitted to the US FDA, on that day itself, you can implement those changes. So this CB0 supplement are exclusively for the labeling changes. Like if you see in the changes to the approved NDA and ANDA guidance document, in that you will see the most of the application of this CB0 are into the labeling section rather than into the any other section. So I will also going to talk about this guidance, not in detail, but like whatever the important points are there. So if you see, for labeling, it's exclusively used. There are also other implications as well. We'll also going to talk about that. So first thing first, we'll start with the definition. So CB0 is a post-approval change category under the US FDA regulations. Obviously, it's for the FDA and it allow immediate implementation of change. Obviously, you don't need to wait. That's why it's immediate implementation. And at the time of submission to the FDA, that is 0 day waiting. That's why for the any submission or the any change which you want to implement immediately, in that cases you can simply go with your CB0. Obviously you have to check first whether your particular change is eligible to file under the CB0. The regulatory citation is 21 CFR 31470C for the NDA ANDA products. What are the key principles of CB0? First, the change has minimum potential to adversely affect the product quality. Obviously, it should have a minimum potential. If you see the hierarchy, you will realize if there is any major change, it will going to be pass. If it is moderate, then it will be either CB0 or CB30. But again in CB, if it has a very minimum impact on your product quality, then you will have to go with CB0. But it has like kind of moderate kind of severe impact, then in that case you have to go with CB30. And lastly, we have annual report, which are very minor changes can be reported into your annual report. So that's why you'll see the change which has a minimum potential to adversely affect the product quality will go into your CB0, and change enhances the product quality, safety and labeling clarity. No prior FDA approval required before implementation. Obviously you can implement and simultaneously you can notify to the FDA. That's why it's like they say it as a low risk change plus immediate execution plus FDA notified simultaneously. So these things happen simultaneously. Moving on to the types of changes which are which are allowed under the CBE-0. So as I discussed earlier, this CBE-0 is uh, mostly used for the labeling changes, which are like minor in nature. So there are the core use of uh, core use cases of CBE-0. First one, in case of labeling, we are discussing first. Add or strengthen. Like if you want add any contraindication into your label, you can go with CBE-0, or want to add any warning, precaution, or adverse reaction. In all these cases, you could simply file the CBE-0, and once you file on the same day, you can implement the change. Implement change. You don't need to wait for 30 days or 6 months to implement that change. You can notify to the FDA, and simultaneously you can implement the change. But again, you have to ensure like there should not be, and like you are not including any major change into your labeling CBE-0, because there are some labeling change which are which need to be filed under PAS and not CBE-0. There is no CBE-30 for labeling changes. The labeling changes will be either CBE-0, or they will directly will be the PAS. There is no CBE-30 for the labeling change. That's why you have to be very careful here. If they are minor in nature, like moderate in nature, like adding any strength, contraindication warning, precaution, or any safety related update, like based on post-marketing data or literature finding, or some of the editorial changes if you are doing. So these kind of moderate to minor changes you could file under CBE-0. But if there are any major changes into your labeling, that has to be filed as a PAS. In editorial, you have improved the readability and correct the typographical errors. These are some of the example. Adding new warning for the liver toxicity based on pharmacovigilance data. So this liver toxicity indication you could simply add into your label, and on the same day you can notify it to the FDA that we have updated this change into our label. The other kind of change, other CMC change which we can file under the CBE-0 are tightening of specification. Obviously here you are tightening specification. I will take an example. Let's suppose there is one impurity present in your final drug product, okay, which has previous limit of 0.2%, and now you reduce the impurity limit to the 0.1%. That means you increase the safety of your final product, right? So in this case, you could file it as a CBE-0, because you are tightening the specification. You are making the product even more safer. You are improving the quality of the product. That's why you can file the CBE-30. On the other hand, if in case you are widening the specification, if you are going from point 1 to the point 2, in that case you will have to file the PAS. But if you are going from the point 2 to point 1, you could simply file it as a CBE-0. So that difference you have to understand, what kind of change that you are making. On that basis, you have to decide which supplement has to be filed. Another example we have, just hold on.